Hello, everyone. I'm Traci Arieli, end-of-life doula and founder of Comforting Closure. Today, we're exploring the transformative power of family-involved death care. Our guest, Trina Wacasey of Creating Honoring Spaces, is here to share her journey and insights into the sacred process of honoring our loved ones in their final moments. Trina's work in at-home death care, including her innovative mini mobile suite, offers a path to more personal and environmentally conscious farewells. Welcome, Trina, and thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure. Great to be here. Great to see you again.
Can you start off and let us know what led you to specialize in family-involved death care and in becoming a death doula?
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, let's see. I was on my way to becoming an interdisciplinary chaplain.
Mm.
My husband and I moved to California from Texas about 5 years ago, and Berkeley had that program, and it sounded fascinating to me. I had been a hospice volunteer and loved that whole thing, and thought about becoming a chaplain. When we got here, we live in the South Bay, and Berkeley is about an hour and a half away. So I realized that's not closer than Texas, but and it was an academic program, and I really wasn't excited about going back to school again. Somewhere along the way, though, before that, someone introduced me to the idea of end of life doulas. I had not heard of them before. And I thought, well, that sounds very practical and hands on, and um, just what I was looking for instead of an academic program. So I pursued that path instead. I began searching on the internet, and I found the Conscious Dying Institute in Colorado. I participated in that in person before COVID in 2019. And um, while I was there, there was a person who came to speak to us who had opened what's called the Natural Funeral Home. And she talked about an experience she had at an assisted living facility where the residents, when a person died, would take care of their friend, their loved one, themselves, would take care of the body. They're in the facility in the room, and they would bathe them, dress them, adorn them with flowers, sit around them, their body, sharing stories, laughing, crying. And then when they were ready, together, they would carry their loved one's body out the front door. And I was just amazed by that. I thought, why don't we do that more often? It makes perfect sense. And so it was Karen Van Buren who was that speaker and who started the Natural Funeral in Lafayette, Colorado, who inspired me to do this kind of work and started me on my journey.
Mm. Can you share the inspiration behind creating honoring spaces and what your mission is?
Sure, I'd be happy to. You know, when you go to visit a loved one, a friend or family member in the hospital, it's such a cold environment. It doesn't feel very warm and loving. And aesthetics, for some reason, are just really important to me. Colors of rooms and the way and things that are in the room are important. And so it's sort of looking at that space. And when a person is at home at the end of their life, looking at that space and realizing that we could improve that. Um, what can we do to surround them with beauty, whether it's visual, auditory, sensual, um, sight, sound, smells, aromas that are more beautiful at the end, and be more intentional with that. So that's really where that idea came from. My first patient after my training was a 12-year-old girl here in this area who um, was dying. She had been in a facility for 5 years. She really didn't have any family. And when I walked in, it was a facility for children. When I walked in, there's um, bright lights, loud noises, machines going off. And I thought, and she wasn't verbal, so I couldn't really communicate with her. We couldn't have a conversation. But I just looked at that experience in that environment and thought, what can I do to make her ending a little bit more beautiful? So the first thing I did was turn off the overhead light that was shining in her eye. When the nurse wasn't in the room, it wasn't necessary. I closed the door. I had some soft music playing in the background, and I would sing to her, I would read to her, I would touch her hand, and just do what I could to create a more honoring space and ending for her life.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. I know that your website mentions a unique offering, the mini mobile suite. Could you explain what that is and how it supports at-home death care?
Yeah, so the mini mobile suite, um, it was an offshoot of me talking to a number of people about home death care, family involved death care, and this opportunity, this uh, right they had to do it. Um, but a lot of people would say, oh, I don't know if I would feel comfortable with having a dead body in the home. They forget that that body is their loved one, and it is someone who they've been caring for, often on hospice. So what happens after death isn't that different than the experience they had while they were sick. Um, However, I did realize that it could be disconcerting to have a decedent in the home for a number of days. So what I came up with was if I could come in and help them bathe and shroud the body, we could put the body, keep the body on their property, but we could put it in the mini mobile suite if I brought it to them. And so I could bring it to them, we can put it in a private place, and they're able to protect, oversee, be with their person uh, in an intimate way, but there's a little bit of what I call insulation or insularity if it becomes too much having them in the home.
What does a typical mini mobile suite memorial look like? What happens?
Well, there's no typical, everybody does things a little bit differently, but just the opportunity to have the person there with them. The mini mobile suite, we'll have pictures of it, but it has windows that open all the way around, and it has a really big hatch in the back that opens wide. So it's easy to bring the decedent in and to take the decedent out. It's also, there are places to sit inside next to your loved one, so you can do that there. We've got lights and place to hang cards and mementos and pictures. Uh, with the windows open, the breeze is blowing through. We've got a countertop on the outside. So if anybody wants to stand outside, have a cup of tea, and look in, they need a little bit more space between them and the decedent, they can do that as well. So everybody has an opportunity to get as close or as far away as they want to. They can move around, they can spend time outside, they can have a gathering, a party. It can be one or two or three people coming and going whenever. The family really gets to personalize and customize that in a way that works for them and the preferences of their loved one. Just gives them so many more options
Yeah.
than the ones that we typically think of with a funeral or memorial being at a church or a funeral home. Uh, there are more and more people who just aren't religious, and that doesn't fit them anymore. So this gives them some flexibility and more options than what's currently available.
Yeah, I know you even have speakers, so they could choose the music that they want and the loved one.
Absolutely. We have electricity, so they can have music, they can have just about anything they want. Now, the mini mobile suite is pretty basic. It doesn't have air conditioning, but living here in California, as compared to living in Houston, living here in California, usually the weather is quite temperate and quite beautiful. And so I would say about 98% of the time, it's available and useful. There would be some times when it's so hot that it might not be a good idea. It does have a fan, but not air conditioning. Um, the thing that's important to remember about keeping your person at home is that you need to keep the body cool. And so we have ice packs that we place around the torso, underneath and on top of the torso to keep the body cool, um, which is quite easy to do. If they don't have a mini mobile suite, they can keep their person in their home, turn on the air conditioning, open the windows, use ice, use frozen peas, just whatever. You can use dry ice too if you're comfortable using dry ice, but not everyone is. So that's the main thing, is just to keep the body cool for the period of time that their loved one is at home.
And when someone is using your mini mobile suite, do you go there daily just to check on the body, make sure everything is good?
Yeah, just available to them to the extent that they want me to be there. Some people are very comfortable and confident that they can do it themselves, especially if they've done the do-it-yourself training with me before. They've gone through the motions and they're familiar with how it can go. But if at any point they feel a little bit uncomfortable, I can come in to help. Perhaps come in and change out the ice if that's what they want me to do. So I can be as available or as unavailable as they want and need me to be.
And that do it yourself training, what is that like? And is it only open to people who want to use the mini mobile suite?
The do-it-yourself training is for anyone. The reason that I came up with that is to give people a hands-on experience, some practice with it before a death occurs so that they begin to understand, what is this thing that we're doing. Um, I came up with family involved death care, but in this space, this industry that I work, they're really called home funerals. But I found that people don't really know what a home funeral is. They think of funeral home, and they're thinking, well, is a casket brought into our house? How does that work? So I call it family involved death care. And we just bring them into my workshop here. I have a massage table set up. I have a hospital bed, it's a twin bed. I have all the supplies here that we can simulate the experience for them. I have the aprons back here that we use, and water in the bathroom there. All of the supplies, equipment that we need to simulate that experience and walk them through it so that they can get comfortable. And then after that, we also simulate the experience of carrying the body into the mini mobile suite. Um, so no, they don't have to use the mini mobile suite to get the training. It's just something to get people comfortable with it, to see if it's something that they might want to do when the time comes, and to know that the mini mobile suite is available, as am I, after the training, if it's something that they feel like they would like to use or need.
What do you use to train on?
I have a couple of options there. I have Manny the mannequin, who is standing over here next to me, overseeing me while I work. He's 6'2", and he isn't very bendable, but he is something that I use for the simulation often. And I've also had the situation where the a live person plays the role of the decedent, and that can be quite an interesting experience too for everyone. So either way, either someone in the group can play the decedent, or we can use Manny the mannequin.
Very good. Do you find that having an at-home funeral affects the grieving process?
Oh, yes, definitely. It's so much more of an intimate opportunity to be able to continue that connection after they've died at home, or even if they died in a hospital, to be able to bring them home and just have some time to let it sink in, to touch them, to see them, to take care of them, to love them intentionally, rather than the body being taken away by strangers and we're not really sure what happens. Um, I think the funeral industry does good work, but if I want my loved one to be close to me after death and I want to take care of them, I feel like it helps us allow the grieving process to sink in. This has really happened, and I got to love them and honor them and take care of them. the last few days before that final disposition occurred. I think it's so, so powerful. And it's interesting because a lot of people I talk to about this um, aren't sure. And then when they go through it, they're like amazed at how powerful it can be. There are people who say they don't want to participate, so they're kind of on the outside looking in. There might be one family member and me who are tending to the body, and they're sort of on the periphery. And then they come in to wash the hands or the feet, and they really get into it and get comfortable with it and realize that this is truly a special liminal time that they'll never have again. And they get this opportunity. So I love educating and empowering people about this possibility.
Yeah. And speaking of educating, how do you educate communities about the benefits and the possibility of at-home death care, and what have been the responses?
Well, I make presentations to hospices. I serve on the board of the Bay Area Funeral Consumers Association. So I've made a presentation about home death care to members of that group. Um, so just making myself available, podcast interviews, that kind of thing, to let people know that it is something that they can do. It's interesting in talking to hospices, social workers in particular are the ones who interact with families and ask the question, have you chosen a mortuary after your loved one dies? And help them, point them in the right direction. I was surprised when I talked to them that they really hadn't thought of home death care, that opportunity before the body is taken away for the family to be with them. And when they heard about it, they thought, wow, that is really powerful. I wonder why I've never heard of it before, or why hasn't a client asked for it before? And I said, probably because they didn't know they could. They didn't know that it was legal. They didn't know it was an option. So now you do know, and it is something that you could offer up as an option to families to give them an opportunity to just spend a special, intimate time with their person before disposition.
Do you know if it's legal in the United States to have an at-home funeral?
Yes, it's legal in all 50 states. There are about 10 states that require a family to hire a funeral director to be uh, involved in some aspects, like filing the paperwork, transporting the body, that kind of thing. So, but it is legal, yes, in all 50 states for the family to take care of their loved one at home before disposition.
Yeah. It always surprises me that we don't see more of this because it used to be the norm. And I know that I've mentioned it before, how we really don't have any good role models on how to die and what happens after death and that after death care. But our great grandparents, or maybe great great grandparents at this point, we would die at home on the farm and everyone would see it, and the body would be there, and the community would get together and say their goodbyes, but the body would be there for a long while.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm not sure why or how we got away from it. It has been said that it was the Civil War that was really the advent of the funeral industry, certainly embalming, because there were people who would come to the battlefield to embalm bodies so that they could be transported home to their families and buried at home. So they say that's about the time when the industry was sort of professionalized, and people began to allow others to take care of this role for them. Um, I'm sure there's a lot of other aspects to it too. I think the funeral industry likes us to think that they are well suited to handle taking care of decedents. They should take care of dead bodies. They give families the impression that it's not something that they would want to do. There's this ick factor. And as long as they give families that perception, then they're going to maintain status quo, that professionals do this work. But it's not necessary. And again, with the advent of hospice, it's been around for several decades now. More and more people are caring for their loved one at home. So this is just a natural extension of caring for your loved one just a few more days after they die, just as you've taken care of them on hospice.
What are some of the challenges that a person who wants to do this, what challenges would they face besides for keeping the body cool or keeping the decedent cool? What can they expect? And are there any regulatory or legal issues that a person might run into?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think some challenges that a person might face include individuals giving them the impression that it can't be done. I know there are certain hospitals, not certain, most hospitals have a policy in place that after a person dies, the only person who can transport the body is a mortuary. Uh, they hire contract drivers to come and pick up the body. That they don't allow the family to transport the body out of the hospital to home. Um, so there are those kind of challenges, somebody saying that it's illegal and it's not illegal. It's just that policy of the hospital that they don't prefer it. And so maybe not knowing the law. There is a guide. It's called the Funeral Cemetery Purchases by the Cemetery Funeral Bureau of California. And all mortuaries have to have this guidebook on hand and make it available to customers so that they know what their rights are. And one of the pages in particular talks about home death care. And it says the use of a funeral establishment and funeral director is not required by law when preparing a body for disposition. You can arrange for your body or that of a loved one to be cared for and prepared for disposition by family and friends at home. So that's the legal right and opportunity that we have here in California. This is the California guide, but they have similar guides in other states in the country. Another excellent resource I would like to tell people about is Home Funerals Guide and Resources. This was created by the National Home Funeral Alliance, and it came out in 2023. It's fairly new. It's a wonderful resource for people who want to learn more about how to do it themselves. And then obviously I'm available to answer any questions too.
Yeah, and they actually, the Home Funeral Alliance actually has that online, has an e-version that's downloadable for free. And if you sign up for, if you give them your email and you sign up for updates, they'll email you updates to it. So yeah, it's really a very good guide. I've read it. So it's.
Yeah. And the National Home Funeral Alliance is just a great organization to brief and update yourself on what is available. They give webinars. So
yeah. What else can a person expect as far as the body itself, the changes that will happen, because you're going to have the body for at least like 2 days?
Yeah, well, there's something to think about. So first of all, a family can choose to have their person at home for a few hours or a few days. They can have them at home for as many days as it takes to get the paperwork in place. And usually it takes about 3 to 5 days for the death certificate to be filed with the Office of Vital Statistics. And from there, a disposition permit, final disposition permit is generated. That's used and taken with the decedent either for cremation or for burial. natural organic reduction, whatever the final disposition is. Um, so regarding changes in the body, yes, the decedent's body will change a bit every day. Maybe the coloring will change a little bit. There's just kind of subtle changes. It's not awful, big, scary changes. Um, so that might be challenging for some people, but if they understand what to expect, because they've educated themselves before the death occurred, gone through training like the training that I offer, then it's not so scary. Um, One thing that is common after death occurs is for the eyes to remain open and the mouth to basically hang open. I mean, all of the muscles are relaxed. And so there's things that we can do to help to close the mouth and keep the eyes closed if that's important to the family. Um, and and if they want to keep the eyes open, the mouth is open a little bit, you can also just put like a scarf, a very delicate, transparent scarf over the face to sort of soften the features. Really, it is the face that is the most important aspect of that person, that stands out. And so there's things that we can do to soften that and make that not feel overwhelming or scary.
Yeah. With working with families, like what do you find the most rewarding aspect of your work?
I think when people realize that they can do this and that they like me when I went through my doula training, I'm like, really? Why don't more people do that? It just sounds so beautiful. And so the awakening that they can do it, and then after they have done it, how proud they feel of themselves for honoring their person in that way, taking on that role, that final act of service, and just how very different the experience is for them as compared to going to a traditional funeral or funeral home where it's choreographed and very formal. This is a very informal, very intimate, very loving, hands-on opportunity, and people are just blown away by how meaningful the experience is for them after they go through it.
Can you share a particularly impactful story or a memorable experience that you've had in your practice that illustrates the difference that an at-home death care has made for a family?
Yeah, there was a family up in San Francisco. Their patriarch was dying. He was nearing the end. And the patriarch had three adult sons and a wife, been married for about 60 years. He was on hospice, and the social worker at hospice recommended that they hire a doula to come in and take care of their father's body. He wanted to have a direct cremation. So she recommended that a doula could come in and assist them taking care of the body before the body was completely taken away to be cremated. And so they reached out to me. We had a Zoom call, and I talked with them about how they would like this to go. And so we had the opportunity to get to know one another, understand what it was that they were looking for. A couple of days later, they called and said their father had died. And I and another doula went up together to clean and take care of their father and get him ready for sort of a final, very informal viewing with all the family. While my colleague and I were there, it was interesting because we were in the master bedroom where he had died, and there was a San Francisco football game going on. I think it was the Super Bowl, and the father who had died was a big San Francisco fan, and so that game was going on in the background, and everybody was hooting and hollering, and there were snacks and people coming and going and being a part of what we were doing, but it was just fun and informal. And, dad was a part of that, and they were a part of taking care of him. And they just got to spend that special time with him before his body was taken away for good. And it felt so good for me to be able to be a part of that familial experience. And it felt good for them to be able to have their dad there at home with them, and spend that last couple of hours. They really just kept him there, I think, for about 8 hours. And then the funeral establishment came and picked up his body. But they said that it was just a beautiful experience. And I love that too. I love being a part of that.
What advice would you give to someone interested in exploring at-home death care for their loved one?
I would recommend the National Home Funeral Alliance website, the book, the Home Funerals book, which is current, very well done. And I would recommend that they understand the laws in their state, especially in California. You can get an online copy of the Funeral Cemetery Purchases Guide, and understand what it is you can do and can't do. One challenge that people have in California is filing the paperwork for the death certificate and the disposition permit. There are some counties that allow families to do that themselves, and there are larger counties like Santa Clara County, where I am, where uh, the vital statistics office really isn't set up to allow individuals to come and go doing that paperwork. There is an electronic death registration system that the mortuaries and hospitals and coroners use to file the death certificate. And so I recommend that families find a mortuary that is open and friendly to them doing as much as they want, and partnering with the mortuary to do the pieces that they're well suited to do, like filing the paperwork. I work with one mortuary in particular, and it took me some time to find them in the San Francisco, San Jose Bay Area. They're called Honor Cremations, and they're very open to supporting families in doing home death care and doing any part of the work, transportation, paperwork, storing the body if that's what they prefer, that the family is uncomfortable doing themselves.
Do you find that many funeral homes or mortuaries won't take in, and not to say that they won't allow a person to have a home funeral, but they're not really comfortable with it, so they don't want to get involved?
I am surprised because a couple of years ago, I called about 10 mortuaries in the area and spoke with whoever answered the phone. And I was surprised that many of them did not know what it was. Many of them thought, what would ask the question, why would anybody want to do that? And many seem to say, that's best left to us. So I would say it is a foreign notion to a lot of funeral establishments that families can do this. And so it's been somewhat challenging for me to find uh, supportive mortuary in this area. That's not to say that they're not out there, but it's taking me some time to find the supportive mortuary. I'm also collaborating with another funeral establishment it's kind of unusual, in the Southern California area. It's White Rose Aqua Cremation, alkaline hydrolysis facility. They're the first in the state, and they will file the death certificate and obtain the paperwork for anyone, whether they choose aqua cremation or not, for a very affordable fee. So those are the two mortuaries that I found who are willing to help families.
They're very nice. We're going to have them on here also.
Yeah, lovely people.
Yeah, they are very. It's really interesting. I know that there was just a ruling a couple weeks ago, or at the end of January, that allows death doulas to do the at-home funeral, and not to get in trouble for doing that. That there, that there is a difference. It really just sets a precedent that there is a difference between what the mortuaries, the funeral industry does, and what we can do. With that, do you see that maybe there'll be a little bit of an opening up, and from the funeral homes to say, okay, let's start working together? Because I would think that yes, a family does have a death doula to help, but do you think people would feel more comfortable with also a funeral home or a funeral director being supportive of it also?
Yeah, thank you for bringing up that court case. Yeah, that was Akila Murphy. She is an end of life doula, and her nonprofit is called Full Circle Living and Dying up in Nevada City. Her nonprofit has been in existence for 15 years, and she's been a home funeral guide for all that time. She was cited by the Cemetery Funeral Bureau for acting like a funeral establishment. It was a 4-year long court battle. And what was decided was that families have the right to take care of their own. And if they want to call in a home funeral guide, an end of life doula to help, they have the right to do so. And doulas do not have to be licensed to provide this help. Um, so it's a huge precedent, especially here in California, but also for everyone, all doulas and all families across the US. The Institute of Justice represented them, and all of this information is on their website for anyone who wants to go and look into that. There was another doula in Indiana who is also in a similar situation, and her case has recently been cleared. And I think that Akila's case probably had something to do with it. Um, Regarding a family working with a doula and a mortuary, I think it's an excellent idea. And I really, as an end of life doula, have been looking for mortuaries to work with me to help clients because I think there are certain aspects of this work that are well suited for funeral directors and the funeral establishment. And there's certain aspects that are well suited for just the family if they want my help for my guidance. So there's a role for all of us to play to support families. And I would love to see more collaboration. I think that's so beneficial for everyone. So absolutely, I hope that we see that trend moving forward is end of life doulas working with the funeral establishments.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Now, I know that you have created some very good relationships with green burial companies. You mentioned one of them, and other eco-friendly groups. How does creating honoring spaces align with the growing interest in sustainability and green burials?
You know, I wasn't, I'm not necessarily um, an environmentalist or a sustainability person so much. I am more interested in minimalism, um, families being a part of the experience. And so um, those are the relationships that I'm looking for to collaborate with those people who allow families to have the hands on experience. One of the groups that I partner with is Parisima Cemetery in Half Moon Bay. They're a green cemetery. And I love going out to the cemetery with families, and they get to, after they've done a home funeral, they get to walk the body to the grave and lower the body and put the dirt on themselves. And this beautiful cemetery overlooks the Pacific Ocean. It's natural, it's rural, it's simple. And so I'm drawn to the simple, I guess, in the minimalist approach and the hands on family involvement. That's the part that I get so excited about. And so when I find others who are interested in that kind of service offering, I naturally gravitate to them because it seems like we're serving similar clientele.
Where do you see the future of at-home death care going? What would you like to see?
Oh gosh, I would love it if everybody knew that it's a possibility. It's interesting, being on the board of the Bay Area Funeral Consumers Association. It's an organization. I think it's one of the oldest one in the country. Um, Jessica Mitford, who wrote the book back in the 60s, The American Way of Dying, started the organization here. And so it's just a consumer advocacy group when it comes to funerary practices. Um, I would love it if we were able to get the consumer more involved in as many aspects of this work as possible. And only draw on the professionals for those parts of the service that they want or need, and not be sold a big package of goods that they don't even want or need. So that's what I'm hoping for. Teaching people is possible and want to be a part of that.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Trina, for being here and for sharing your insights and your experiences with us. Your dedication to creating honoring spaces for end of life care is really inspiring, and I cannot wait to see where it goes. How can people get a hold of you?
They can go to my website, creatinghonoringspaces.com. They can also send me an email it's Trina, Trina, at creatinghonoringspaces.com. Happy for them to send me an email. They could call me. My mobile is 713-306-8112. Call or send a text, and I would love to talk with anyone in more detail if they're interested in learning more about home death care.
Thank you. Folks, today's conversation is a powerful reminder that in the journey of saying goodbye, we have options that honor the dignity, wishes, and spirit of our loved ones. We can bring the heart back into the farewell process, ensuring that it reflects the beauty and the uniqueness of the lives we're celebrating. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please comment below or reach out to me directly. And if you found this conversation to be helpful, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. This is Traci Arieli from Comforting Closure, wishing you peace and comfort in your journey. Until next time, take care.